me.
All right, everybody, shalom, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and, of course, the Land of Israel Network on podcast. Shalom, everybody, and we're going to start our show in just a minute. Beforehand, let's just do a little meet and greet, get ready, get warmed up. Rav Mike Feuer, shalom and welcome.
Whoa, shalom. I'm sharing the show even as we speak.
I would, if this was a regular pre-Purim show, I'd love to have a l'chaim with you right now.
All right,
but it's Tanis Esther today.
It's a TV keeper.
If we would have done it yesterday, it would have been fine to get some of that fireball that I have.
Ooh.
Yeah. What do you drink on the Chag? What's your
wine. I drink wine.
You're one of these all wine guys, right? That's the best way. That's the best way to do it.
It's the only way to go as far as I'm concerned. But
drinking a lot of wine is very problematic for me. I don't know. I can't.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying it's an easy avoda, but they call it avoda for a reason.
And if maybe I would love. You know what? I'm going to ask Malka to buy some of that Oregonese wine that I like. I like that Oregonese. Oregonese. Okay, well, we're going to have a great show for everybody, so I'm excited. But what I'd like is for anybody, to tell me how we look, how we sound.
Marvelous.
Yes. So Scott says hello, and Olivera says fig liquor. Fig liquor.
That just sounds. I don't know. We're just gonna leave this one be.
Yeah. Okay. Our friend and producer Lou Weiss says shalom. Yishai and Rav Mike looking and sounding good. Baruch Hashem. I just want to say before the show starts, I called the internet company because I was having some buffering, and they're like, oh yeah, man, we're looking at your router, and there's a lot of error messages. I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, because there's a lot of error messages and they haven't been cleared, that can cause buffering. I'm like, okay. He's like, you know what I'm going to do I'm going to set on an automatic to clear the error messages. I'm like, okay, why didn't you do that earlier? I was like, what are you even talking about? All these.
And what's the point of having an error message which is automatically erased?
Just the whole thing was just like there was like a whole world that is happening in my house, and I didn't even know about that. Rav Mike, she says, Lavera, is that correct? Should Rav Mike be a little bit louder? Is that correct?
I can speak louder.
All right, very good. All right, very good. So let us start our show biachad in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it, wherever you are. And shalom and welcome to all of our live viewing audience on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope, and later on podcast at the Land of Israel Network and on YishaiFleischer.com. Rav Mike Feuer, historian, spiritual mentor and guide, and great, awesome guy all around, joins us. Shalom, Rav Mike, an educator. An educator.
Yeah. With
That's
an introduction
right.
Like that, I feel like we should just end the show on a high note.
Speaking of ending on a high note. It's our Purim show, and therefore we're a little bit funky. We're a little bit different. I was trying to get
not because of any chemical assistance. It is a fast day after all.
That's right. It's a fast day, but there are many ways to access those endorphins, and one of those ways. I tried to
explain this to my class yesterday. That Purim is about madness, not drunkenness. If you need a little bit of alcohol to get into the madness space, it's okay, but it's not what it's essentially about.
Okay, well, let's go with that then. Like, why do we need a madness day? Let's just say that in many religious traditions, they always had, a Saturnalia and days of where the
Bacchanalia and the
Bacchanalia, right, where you take some guy off the street and you make him into the king and all kinds of and then usually
you burn him in effigy
right, exactly. At the end, you burn him and stuff or impale him and bad things happened. Really bad things happened, and certainly licentiousness. What do we have an upside down day where there's gross what's the word I'm looking for when you flaunt the
hedonism?
Flaunt the law and succumb to hedonism? Is that the thing that
do on the show?
I don't want to flout, but is that what's happening here? Is that what Purim is about?
Well, I think it's important to own the fact that this is indeed the season. I mean, it is spring, right? The life is starting to awaken after the winter, and it's not a coincidence that sort of Carnival, Bacchanalia type celebrations tend to happen May Day or in the spring. The difference is that the Torah never just kind of like, I shouldn't say never. The Torah rarely cuts completely across the grain of human experience. Right? Meaning, so it's not like, oh, see, the Jews have their thing too. It shows you're not different than anyone else. No, we're human, right? Jews are just like everyone else, only more so. The difference is that the Torah takes this energy and it makes it a source of geula, of redemption. And that's where the madness is so important, right? The command, and when I say madness, I want to be specific. The command is to reach that point of ad de lo yada, to the point of not knowing. Why? So inebriation, unfortunately for some people, leads to that state. But not knowing doesn't mean like forgetting and ignorance, etc. It means letting go of the need to know and opening yourself to the vastness of a world which actually can't be known. Rather than shrinking the world to something you can understand and then getting drunk to forget about it, it's holding what it means to stare into the infinite. And it's very important because Purim, of course, is the gateway to Pesach. In that sense, is that you have to blow the doors wide open in order that a real redemption can come through. The other way to say this is that I always feel very sad when people start to tell me what it's going to be like in the days of the Messiah. You know why?
Why?
Because why would I want a redemption that is small enough that it already fits the world in which we live? Think big, people. Right? The geula that we're waiting for is so big that we can't even imagine it. It's emunah, though, that even without imagining it, we'll be able to grasp it, attach ourselves to it, that will please God merit to see it.
So you're saying don't contain it. Don't contain it by saying this is what it's going to be like. Keep the options open. Keep the imagination just totally free of limitations.
You got to break the bonds, and sometimes that
and that's what you're saying. Purim's about, right? Okay. By the way, I just want you to know that that Benji Zion and another person said, and Oliveira said that I think Rav Mike should be a little louder. Instead, I have lowered myself and I have reduced my volume. Yes, no, I have.
You want me to raise the gain on my mic?
No, I raised the gain on my. I lowered the gain just now on my mic, so let me know. People can know. Let me know if that's actually going to.
I can also sit up. You already asked me to sit up before I'm slouching.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so Purim is a day to break out of
the bounds,
the boundaries and bounds that have been set, sometimes by other people, sometimes by this world,
sometimes by ourselves on ourselves.
That's probably the most. Probably the most is that you kind of put yourself in a box you think I can't, and this helps you break out of that. It's also, I think, one of the things that is strange to me is that in one way of calculating, it's actually the final holiday of the year.
Oh yeah,
and it's like therefore the penultimate holiday of the year, the zenith, the big shebang. And you can understand that Purim has got that energy, but on the other hand, and this is why the rabbis had such a hard time with accepting the Megillah into the canon, is that on the other hand, that God is hidden, and maybe that is the penultimate, that God is hidden,
right.
And therefore we have to.
Can I vent a pet peeve?
Oh,
really
go ahead, say that again. Yeah, I lost you for a second. Go ahead.
I want to vent a pet peeve. Penultimate doesn't mean the final. It means the one before the final.
The one before the final. That's right.
Sorry, people use it all the time. I usually ignore it. But you're good.
You know what? I'm looking for the fancy word that's like the ultimate, and I lost it. You know what I mean? If I could get somebody help me, my friend Eric probably will. Our friend Eric will probably write to me and tell me what the best word is. I'm looking for the. I
pronounced the last one incorrectly.
What's that?
And that I pronounced the last one
incorrectly. Which one?
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He suffers from my pronunciation more than probably anyone on the planet.
In any case, so Purim is the ultimate. I'm gonna look up the word ultimate here on thesaurus, but like it's the big one. It's the final one, and yet one of the things that's so strange about it is that it's not the ultimate in the sense that the holiday itself doesn't bring you to the land of Israel. It doesn't bring you to the third temple. It kind of leaves you asking for more. There's a great movie called Esther. As some listeners may recall, Malka and I basically really try to collect Jewish movies, and this Esther movie has in it a character that's basically Nehemiah, and Nehemiah, in the Esther movie, which tells the story of the scroll of Esther, the Megillah. But there's this character in Nehemiah, and he's like, or no, there's both Nehemiah and Ezra, and they're like, but our salvation is in the land of Israel. So obviously, the people who wrote it used other parts of Jewish history around the Megillah in order to kind of throw in these characters that were like going to give it completion of yearning for the land of Israel, which is in fact what the sages and what the whole history is about there. But it's not in the book. And so how is it that the scroll of Esther, the Megillat Esther, is actually the end where we complete? Is it just as simple as saying it just you end the year by yearning for more, like this tremendous madness energy, you could flip everything can happen, but you still are on the road to final completion?
I mean, I think that's a worthy observation. I would add to it the notion of Sofo Tochav Berosho. It's a very important idea. The end is planted in the beginning, right? What do I mean? Is that the year is a cycle, right? And one might think that as a cycle, it leads to ennui. I'm gonna give that one to Eric too.
I know that one. Yeah, you said it right.
Meaning, okay, I'm going around on a sunrise, sunset. Like, what's the point? It's gonna be the same next year. Why are you so excited about Pesach? We had Pesach last year, and but the power of the Hebrew calendar is that it's a rising spiral, right? And that in its spiral motion, right, you can lean into it and rise. And in order to have that element of rise, right, the Purim's got to be so big that when it comes back around to the beginning of the year at Pesach, it expands Pesach itself. You understand? So picture the lines kind of going like this as it goes around and around and around. And Soho Tachaf Berosha, the end is actually bigger than the beginning was. Right. And therefore it forces that beginning even wider so that the path is even greater as you go forward. That's why I said that these are Somech Gula L'Geula. You have to have the redemption of Purim before you can have the redemption of Pesach. We talk about like 30 days before the holiday. It's Sholim V'Dorshim. We're supposed to learn and prepare for the holiday, right? So what's 30 days before Pesach?
It's Purim.
That's right. You got to learn a little of the Hilchos Pesach at your Purim Suda, people. It's a good minhag.
Oh, nice one. I like that a lot. Okay, that's very good. I have another little minhag that I totally developed on my own and got absolutely no rabbinic supervision on, but it's not going to harm anything, is that on Yom Kippur...
Don't try this at home.
On Yom Kippur, I try to read the Megillat Esther, and on Purim, I try to do something from Yom Kippur.
You read Achrei Mot.
Yeah, Achrei Mot, that's a good one, but no, usually something from the liturgy is what I do. Actually, I try to daven something a little bit, like I look into the Yom Kippur davening, and I try to do something like that, like Hamelech, right? I try to. One. Yeah, it's a good one. It does it when you're.
I'm gonna sing. I'm gonna bust out Marek Kohen.
That's right. Exactly right.
That's a good idea. I like that idea.
It's very powerful. It's very powerful when you link up those two days. And our sages tell us.
We're going to share a couple more practical things for people to do with their Suda. Next one.
Okay, go ahead.
Is a great game. It's fun with the kids too. Good for adults as well. Is you take a Tanakh, like a big one, and you have someone start to leaf through the Tanakh without looking, just leafing, or it's even better to have them do it like this, and then you say stop. Wherever they stop, they have to find the reference to Purim on the page.
Ooh.
It's a lot of fun. You get some really good stuff.
Like Esther Minalan type of thing? What's
the connection? What's the connection?
Oh, I like that.
What you're looking at to the end. I'm telling you, every single line in the entire Tanakh, if you are open to it, can connect directly to the Megillah, which, by the way, is the role it plays, in my humble opinion, in the Hebrew canon. I mean, the whole discussion of whether the Megillah should go in or not. The Megillah is the keystone. If you want to understand the architecture of the Hebrew Bible as a unit, because our sages put quite a bit of thought in, and you can see the difference between one of the reasons I like to say Hebrew Bible as opposed to just Bible is because, when you say Bible, Christians have a different canon. I mean, it's mostly the same, but not even getting into the specifically Christian scriptures, but there are decisions like the book of Maccabees, probably most well known, So it's important to understand that the Megillah, which is the most crafted literary piece, as we see from the end of the Megillah itself, is a keystone. It's meant to open up its referential nature, etc. Right? So it's an important thing to it's a good game to
Right.
play.
It puts together like there's a lot of stories that go into it. Like, for example, just little things like when Jacob tells his sons finally, when he gives over Benjamin to Judah, to Yehuda, to take him down to Mitzrayim. So he says, Kasher Sakolti, like, if I die, I die. And we hear this.
If I'm bereft of my children, I bereft.
That's right. Okay. If I'm lost, right.
It's Esther that says Kasher Avarti.
Right. Esther says, Kasher, if I'm lost, I'm lost. And he says, if I'm bereft, I'm bereft. But you can see that that's the same energy. Of course, everybody knows the Joseph story is linked up with the Megillah very much. Especially you got the second in command, this vice, what do you want to call it? Prince of Egypt,
Viceroy.
if you want to. Viceroy, that's right. So there you go. That's what Joseph is, and he goes out on this carriage, and they call out in front of him, Avrech, right? Which does not mean that he's going to be studying all day.
He's going to be a long-term Kollel student.
Yeah.
Avrech.
There you go. Baruch Hashem. Got a Torah learner.
Between a large cheese pizza and an Avrech is?
No.
A large cheese pizza can feed a family of 4.
Nick. Okay, very good. All right, and so I understand what you're saying by Keystone, but very interesting, very fascinating to me is that, and not surprising is that in Qumran, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the one book they did not find was the Scroll of Esther, the Megillat
That was
Esther.
my point. We have a recorded argument amongst the sages in the Gemara about whether to include it or not. And you see, there's a reason that we call them schismatics. I mean, they probably called us schismatics too, let's be honest. But who won that argument?
That sounds like a klezmer band, schismatics.
The schismatics? Oh, that is a good name for a klezmer band.
The schismatics. Yeah, okay.
Right, meaning that was the group whose roots were in Rabbinic Judaism who went their own way. And see where it got them. They're
If you don't
museums now.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have Purim, you end up just
depressed and by the side of the road. We got to talk about Simcha, man. We got
to talk about Simcha. Okay, that's a great point. That's a great segue, because right now in the world there's a lot. Speaking of the schismatics, which is I think you and I should have a band.
We're doing. I don't play any instruments, but I'm willing to be in the band. Can I be the front man?
Sure, man. You can do.
When I wear like fancy suits and sing the blues.
Yeah. I'll be like the cool bassist guy. Boom, boom, boom,
okay,
boom.
Okay, you're already wearing the jacket and the black shirt. You look
That's
good.
right. That's right. The schismatics. The source of Simcha. I have a lot of friends right now that are concerned with all kinds of. I don't like this term because that's also a berating term, which is they are in the conspiracy theory realm or the rabbit hole realm. I don't like to use it. It's not a fair term because I want to give them their intellectual value of what they're thinking and saying, and I actually think that there is definitely good questions and good issues that are raised.
But in any case, called conspiracy theories. I mean, it's false. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean there aren't people out to get you.
Right. But still, though. But in any case, what I have noticed is that a lot of those friends of mine are specifically in a bad mood and depressed because they really see. They kind of see Amalek everywhere, right? They see him. They see people trying to take away their freedoms and turning towards totalitarianism. And then there's another group of people, which I actually, it was interesting. Yet last week at Kiddush and Shul, we were around a table outside and not sitting. We were around the table and people had masks on, but still, we were eating and stuff. And so one guy says to the other, "Have you been vaccinated?" So, like, basically the whole table had been vaccinated, and there was a sense of relief. Of course. And so anyway, the point is, there's also people who are still concerned about the American elections and what happened there, and there's problems with the Israeli elections coming up here, and there's a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of, I'll just say it in short. There's a lot of people who are upset at people like Naftali Bennett, at people like Gideon Sar, at people in Gideon Sar's party who were all Netanyahu people who have now become his detractors. And so there's a lot of like...
In fairness, if you exclude former Netanyahu people from our political system, you actually get rid of 70% of it. So
right, that's right. That's right. That's absolutely true. So Gideon Sar, but like a big one was Zev Elkin, and he came out, left the Likud, went over to New Hope Party, and really began to besmirch Netanyahu. So a lot of people were like, our politics have become gross again. or maybe have never left. Then there's this concern. That we'll have to go to fifth elections, and this is such a funny thing. It's like because there's like some kind of impasse. Although what's so annoying about this impasse of finding 61 Knesset members to make a coalition is that, for God's sakes, there's about like 80 Knesset members who are nationalistic and have similar opinions. So there's a lot of frustration in the air, and a lot of my good buddies and friends, not all, people who I very, very much not only like but also respect very deeply, have gone towards a rabbit hole of a bad mood. They've been depressed. In fact, one of my friends, I told him this, and he said to me that it really made him think, and he realized that even if he holds these opinions, he's got to feel confident and look happy with his opinion instead of being all like depressed and sullen and seeing like the enemy everywhere. And also, instead of seeing the geula everywhere, the redemption everywhere, the process that we're in everywhere, which is like a mindset that I try to keep up, which is like, wow, Hashem is everywhere, and that's what the Megillah is all about, and that's what's really happening. And like we're living in that time. We're living in a time of revelation and redemption.
It's big.
So some of these good folks have really lost that consciousness, and they need a little pick-me-up, I would say, spiritual pick-me-up to get back to it. So what is the source of simcha? How do you find it? Oh, you know what? One more thing, and then I'll let you opine on it, which is Rabbi Nachman says that you will always face problems with either child rearing, health, or parnasah. Or how did you call how do we say parnasah? What was the word you'd like to use?
Livelihood?
Livelihood, right. Livelihood. So those he says, Rabbi Nachman says, you'll always have a problem with one of those things. Child rearing, health, or livelihood. There'll always be a thing. Even if everything's great, you'll find a little kotz, a little
some kvetch,
some boo-boo on your some krechts. So you'll always find something. He says, and that is the secret of happiness. You have to know that it cannot be dependent on all things being perfect. It's just not going to work out that way. You got to find inner joy.
So I mean, it's so true, and I think that the keystone to understanding happiness. And by the way, let's we can take it out of the realm of the conspiracy theorists who are feeling the walls closing in into just the general fact. It's been a hard year. Let's remember this is the last holiday which we had not celebrated yet under COVID. When I think back to the last Purim suit, it was like Shamayim. We're sitting on the porch and the sunshine, and Yerushalayim's in the background, and the madness is on the rise. Just feeling mamash free.
Right. I was in like semi-bidud. I was one of the first people. Really? I just came back from America, and I had been at CPAC and APAC.
CPAC, yeah.
And I came back, and I was like, and they actually, there was a big party. They canceled it in part because of me. And I was like, that was the beginning.
I remember that. I remember speaking to you. But so, meaning, I just want to honor the fact that even people who don't sort of aren't drawn down into that rabbit hole, as you called it, of these, people are struggling to be happy. And I think that the keystone to understanding the avoda, well, first of all, actually, the keystone to understanding the avoda is that it's an avoda. It takes work to be happy. I know that may be cliche and you've heard it before, but don't forget that. Happiness is not just a mood. It's true, moods come and go, and I also want to make a very important caveat that depression is a very real thing. And if a person is feeling that they've lost sight, if there's any emotional state outside of their sadness, if they've lost motivation for taking action, for self-care, etc., please speak to someone, because depression is a real thing and it's dangerous. And look out for the people around you. I'm not speaking out. I'm talking about being sad and like, why should I be happy now, right? So I think that the keystone there, aside from remembering that it's an avoda and it just takes work, is one line in the entire Megillah, which actually explains, especially to the conspiracy folks, because I think that the reason that, and by the way, I am not out of the bounds of conspiracy theorists. I want to make that clear. Trust me, as our conversation before the show proves. But I think that one of the challenges, conspiracy theories all hinge on this idea that there's a group of people somewhere controlling things, right? And they're doing, for whatever their reasons are, not good reasons, and then it's the control piece that makes them sad, right? Because the whole wisdom of Mordechai's stance in the Megillah is summed up in the one spoken line that he gets. It's not even spoken, he sends it as a message through Chatach to Esther while she's in the harem, but it's the only line he actually articulates in the entire Megillah, right? Which is often missed when you read it, because he does this, he does that, and the Megillah talks about what he does and talks about what he said, but it doesn't actually tell you his words until you get that famous line, right? Right? If you hold silent, right? He sends to Esther saying, you got to do something. Haman's going to kill us all. And she says, everybody knows that, like, I'm just going to die by going to the king. He says, if you hold silent at this moment, what you want him to say is, like, we're all going to go down. He says, but he doesn't. He says, first and foremost, you have to remember that God is holding the big picture, not some cabal of wacky fascists in a dark room somewhere. God is holding the big picture. Now, that may not make it easier, because it's also God that brought COVID, and it's also God that brings personal tragedy, etc. That's where the avoda comes. But it's important to remember that who's in charge. There's another place, there's a context, a horizon, which is bigger than that. But the real key to happiness is the next piece. When he says to Esther, okay, you're not here to save the Jews per se, but you're in danger. You're in danger, he says, right? 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 You and your father's house, you're going to perish if you don't act. That's the essential. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe this is your chance. That's the key to happiness. Accepting the fact that you don't know. That this world that you think you understand, that you've defined, whether it's conspiracy theorists or how it's going to be bad or why it should be, let go of that a little bit and accept the fact you don't know and take it as a call to action. Because the way to be happy is, number one, to realize that you're not in charge, that God's in charge. Number two, that you still have agency. You need to take action. You don't necessarily know what that action is right now, but that's how you maintain happiness. I'm going to take action to make the world look the way I believe it should look. Am I going to succeed? I don't know, because that's a train wreck. If it's obsessive need to know, but in that not knowing, and that's why I said before, that's what Purim's about. Who knows? Who knows? And you say it with a smile instead of a who knows. That's my take.
That's really good, and that brings me to one of the great stories that I ever heard in my life, from one of the greatest storytellers that's around today. His name is Rabbi Mendel Kaplan, out of Toronto at Flamingo Chabad Center.
It's called
Rabbi
Flamingo.
It's Flamingo.
Actually called Flamingo.
It's called pink. Flamingo. It's one of the most beautiful
shows in Miami.
Right, and that's Rabbi Mendel Kaplan. He's an honest to God genius. And a few years ago, I was in Toronto. Where even is that? Like, I don't even know where. Yeah, where is it? I don't even know what that is or where that is. But I remember
frozen north. It's in the frozen north. So.
Yeah, I remember I was out there, and he told me this story about Purim. He told me that once he was a bacher, he was a student in Yerushalayim, and he on Yom Kippur morning.
That's the difference for those who are following.
That's right. And he went to the mikveh. He was coming out of the mikveh, and he saw some old guy, old man, and the old man was like cracking, oi, 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 and he said to him, this is all in Yiddish, right? So he says, what's wrong? What's happening? And the guy says to him, I hate Purim, an old religious Jew. And the old Jew says to him, so Rav Mendel says to him, you hate Purim? He goes, yeah, I hate Purim. He goes, I never know if I heard the whole Megillat Esther correctly. I don't know if I heard it all, because there's a mitzvah to hear every word of the Megillah. So I listened to it 5 times. And even still, I'm not sure that I didn't miss one word. Then there's Matanot Levinim I have to give to poor people, but I don't really know if the guy that I'm giving to is actually poor or not, and therefore I don't know if I fulfilled the mitzvah. And finally, I drink, and I never know if I can really fulfill Adeloy Adad. Did I really drink enough? Did I go to sleep? Is that the halacha?
I always end up passing out before I know whether I don't know.
That's right.
Sorry.
And he goes, I hate Purim for this reason. And so it really ties into, and Rabbi Mendel's conclusion was and is that that's where you have to have a more Hasidic outlook, a more how should we say, spiritual, more inner light kind of attitude, and not just get like trapped by the legalistic control things. But that ties into what you're talking about,
inside.
Right? The little litvak inside, what I call the pintala misnagid. In any case, which is fine. I actually have a pintala misnagid inside.
Oh yeah, mine's bigger than a pintala. It's got a growth. It's a growth, Yishai.
Oi. Okay, So
Rewatch it.
I just want to tell you that I love that story so much that I begged him to record it for me and to send it to me on WhatsApp, and then I uploaded that audio into my Google Drive, so I have it, and every year I listen to him tell that story again. It's the funniest. Okay. It's just he's a great storyteller. But I think that's also in part what you're talking about here, which is the sense of this tension between freedom and control, our control of our lives, and at the same time understanding that we don't have control, and yet we still have agency. Like we have a lot, or we have a little, and it is our freedoms, but it's not everything. And there's a tension between trusting yourself and trusting your freedoms and trusting the other, and then trusting God, and trusting your society around you. Here's a situation I had in shul, Rav Mike Feuer. Here's a situation I had in shul last Shabbat. There's a really great guy in shul, but he's a deep anti-vaxxer. He is a deep anti-vaxxer. And he came to shul without his mask on. So then one dude, let's call him straight-laced dude, which is, and I'm really, anybody who's listening to me, please do not in any way assume that I am, that I'm coming down in judgment on either one of these gentlemen. Although I'll go on with the story. So the straight-laced guy said to not anti-vaxxer guy, he said to him, put on your mask, please. It's that's the law. And the guy said to him in no other words than go to hell. and this is the middle of shul. And straight-laced guy's like, hey guys, like what's going on here? And he turned to the rabbi, and the rabbi turned to anti-vaxxer, and he said to him, please put on your mask. And the anti-vaxxer nicely said to the rabbi, I am not complying with that.
He didn't tell the rabbi to go to hell.
No, he did not. But then anti-vaxxer, then the straight-laced guy says to me, Nu, what do you think of the situation? So I said to him, this was a strange moment because, anyway, I said to him, look, the mitzvah of davening in a minyan with the quorum is derabanan, is only a rabbinic law, but pikuach nefesh is d'oraita.
Yeah, sure.
Right, and therefore, if you think that you have a pikuach nefesh, you should leave the shul right now.
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah, right. And he said to me, but he's forcing me out. I said yes, but I don't have any way to make him comply. I have no vehicle to comply, and therefore, if you think that this is a pikuach nefesh moment, you should leave.
Yeah. And I think there's wisdom in that answer, but it's uncomfortable from a sort of social psychological standpoint.
I just want to add one more little caveat, which is the anti-vaxxer guy did actually go through COVID himself. Okay, and he meaning to say he should be already. But in any case, it was a very tough moment. When we came out of shul, I gave it to anti-vaxxer, and I said to him, look, I understand that you believe what you believe, which is fine. But like you're forcing it upon other people. We have you're saying everybody's an idiot, and the society can't decide for itself. This town and this country and this town has decided how it wants to behave. That's the law, and you're flouting that law, and you're putting people in very uncomfortable situations, and that's really unfair. But he said to me, this is like the what do you call it? The ghetto, the Warsaw ghetto.
The Warsaw ghetto,
right? And people are dying all around, but we're not like fighting it, and we're succumbing to these lies. I mean, if a person believes that, that's there's
once you pull the Warsaw ghetto card, it's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go home and get some coffee.
So what?
Sit here and stew in your wackiness.
I'm asking you now in your ethicist capacity here.
Let me put on my ethicist hat.
Yeah, I'm putting on you. Remember, there was a New York Times column called The Ethicist.
I think there still is.
That was a good one. That was a good column because those were challenging questions. So I was in an ethicist moment here, and that's what I came up with. The straight-laced guy was not happy with my response, but I was just like, he was trying to be the law, and I said to him, I don't think you have agency to be the law. You're just gonna have to walk out of here. P.S. Just so you know, parenthetically, I said to him, if you think your life is in danger, you should leave. He said to me, no, I don't think so. Minastam, he knew that he himself was vaccinated, and he probably didn't believe. Anyway, so what do you think of that situation?
Well, and that's where the problematic comes in. Is what the force there that's being played around is compliance and a feeling of safety. And I think that you did the exact right thing, which is and this is one people are struggling with. Is such a gray situation. Like, I feel safe, I don't feel safe, I feel oppressed, I don't, etc. you reach for something which is actually tangible, which is like, wait a minute, why are you here, Mr. Anti-Vax or Mr. Vaxxer? Because you want to daven in a minyan. That's great. Why are you concerned? The only legit concern, and I agree with you, the only legit concern is public health and safety, which is a real concern. It's a real concern. There could be someone who's not vaccinated there, and by the way, the vaccination is not 100%. And so then, you did a halachic analysis and said that, okay, if you need to, then you should leave. The problem, I would say that it was a good, and following up with the sort of the musar, the moral ethical lesson to the anti-vax guys is excellent. There's one last piece I would say is what's the takanan of the shul? Meaning, what rules has the shul established? Because aside from the sort of general, you're supposed to wear a mask, you're not, I'm not going to let you oppress me. On some level, there is a very explicit social contract in belonging to any organization. And like my shul has been very explicit. They've been expressed that we are just going to be strict. Even children, below the age of 1, we expect them to either be with a mask or be outside, etc. And like, you don't have to agree, but here's our rules. We post them on the wall. There's a vod of the shul, and like, if you don't want to agree, there are other shuls, there are other places to go.
Right.
And so that's the other piece I would say there is that because society breaks down very quickly when people determine that they are the sole decisor of their behavior.
Right, and that's what Straight Laced Guy said to me. He's like, this is going to be a breakdown of the law here, and I totally agree with him that. But on the other hand, and this is my dilemma inside, is that I am loath to quash the freedom people. Like today, I understand, especially being a Jew who has gone through the disengagement. And understanding how societal pressure from top down, did this horrible thing, which we knew was wrong and we knew was societally wrong.
But convince enough people out there with a very clear, systematic approach to psychology and advertising, etc. Convince enough people out there, and they train the army. I can tell you horrible stories. My friend who was in training as an industrial psychologist within the army while this was going on. Horrible. The tools.
Absolutely. By the way, I was called into reserve duty for the disengagement because my unit was going to be part of it, and they said to me, "Well, are you going to fulfill orders?" I said to them, "Let's just save time. Why don't you just arrest me now?" That's what I told them. I said, "Just arrest me." They were like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Right now, to cart me away, because there is no way that I'm going to be part of this thing." And they were like, and of course, I did not get called in. But the point is that like that's an important spirit. And you know what else, Rav Mike, and here's still keep your ethicist hat on. If I knew 100% that something was like evil, then I wouldn't have moral dilemma. Like if I thought that guy in shul was the anti-vaxxer was promulgating something that I knew for sure wasn't evil, for sure.
Right. He's going on coughing in people's faces.
Yeah,
and
I would pick him up with my hands and chuck him out. You know what I mean?
And then wash them thoroughly afterwards.
Right, exactly. By the way, just to close this part of the discussion, I just want you to know that my beloved brother Josh, who does a lot of amazing filming in the land of Israel, went yesterday to Sheba Medical Center, I think the biggest hospital in the Middle East, and filmed at the Corona ward, and the doctors with tears in their eyes. Said to him, you don't understand what people face with this disease. People lose their lungs, people this and that, and they gave him he came out very clear that the vaccination is good and that it saves people's lives, and from their perspective, real freedom is to be rid of this disease. And from other people's perspective, including famous political actor here in Israel, Moshe Feiglin, and a friend of mine who told me that the cartoons that are being used in order to get people to vaccinate are Chinese-like, because he just came out from China. I'll play that interview next week. It's such a tension between freedom and what we are being told is public health. I don't know. I find myself like understanding both sides. Listen,
you're a Jew. This is the nature of halachic
discourse. Although full disclosure, excuse me, full disclosure, I had my second shot.
Yes, as have I. I mean, and what I meant when I said you're a Jew is that like one of the powers and beauties of the tradition that we've inherited and that we continue to please God push forward in the world is that we understand that everything is values negotiation. You know, people make fun of the like. On the other hand, you can't be right. But the reality is that's actually far more reflective of the reality of life. There's no simple path, and people, it's funny. It's poor. People want to talk about Amalek, and they say, but Amalek is doubt. Amalek is a suffix, Amalek is the gematria suffix, right? You hear how many times you heard that. It's the same numeric value as the word for doubt. Therefore, what's the solution to Amalek? You should have no doubt. You should be certain, right? Wrong. Did you just listen to the line I just read you? Miyodea. Mordechai's only certain about one thing. Kadosh Baruch Hu's in charge.
Right.
That you have to be certain about.
So you're saying that the opposite of doubt is faith.
The opposite of doubt is
emunah. Is what?
No, the opposite of doubt is wonder.
Wonder
is the ability. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about psychology. It's the ability to live in a world which you don't comprehend.
Right.
But instead of saying I don't know, saying I don't know. That's a key to happiness, right? Meaning, like, if you think you know, you have no hope. Because hope, the essence of hope is understanding that what is doesn't necessarily define what will be. Something can happen. Who knows? I don't know. Without that wonder, there is no hope. Without hope, there's no life. Right? And that's why, by the way, so often what we associate with religious fanaticism, like true fanaticism, is a miserable state of being.
Right. That's right. Missionary types, I've noticed, are never happy and never satisfied.
As opposed to, by the way, the other type of religious ecstaticism, as opposed to fanaticism, which is just a God-saturated world. And okay, I can't explain to you why bad things happen, and I can't explain to you why, but I don't know. But the wonder of it, wonder, it's so big, so important.
Very good. Let me just do a few of our listeners' comments here. We have Jay White who says, "Shalom, gentlemen. Thank you again for your prayers each week for my mother Yvette Bat Irene, who has been struck with COVID. She's now awake and conscious, Baruch Hashem. Purim Sameach, lots of love. So continued refuah shlema to Yvette Bat Irene. Please come out of the hospital soon, Bezrat Hashem.
Amen.
And thank you so much, Jay. Amen. And Yaakov Walk, with good sense of humor, says that Purim was the yahrzeit of social life.
Right, we've come all around to the year. Nice.
That's right.
Nice.
Well, I just want to say that right from the get-go, I really felt that this was a type of Shemitah year, a type of closure, a type of Shemitah year for a lot of stuff. And I predict that we're going to come out of this stronger, healthier, happier, and really onto the next shlav, the next stage of. I felt that inside. Okay, Anne says, "Shalom from the UK with fond memories of special Purim a few years ago in your neighborhood, Yishai." All right, Anne, God bless you. Which neighborhood are you referring to? Do you mean the Mount of Olives?
You've lived in a number of places.
A few places. Now, our good friend Lou says the anti-vaxxer should not go to the minyan. Right. That's that would be the simple thing, right? That would be.
But that was my point about having rules for the shul. Meaning, it is legitimate for a synagogue, as with any association, to have rules. If you don't want to be part of the rules, so don't be in the club. Is that
right? But within his mind, he's saving people. And by the way, if you've read the latest thing that Feiglin put out, he's like calling basically.
I'm always wary of people whose justification for their behavior is "I'm saving you."
Right.
I'm like, get back off a little bit. I'll save myself. I'm willing to hear what you have to say from a distance.
I hear you, Rav Mike Feuer. I hear you 100%. And yet, today, when we live in the age of information control, data mining, Chinafication of our world, when I see a guy who's a rebel like that, and by the way, the anti-vaxxer guy is a smart guy and a wealthy guy. Meaning, so he's been successful in his life. He ain't no down and outer. Okay,
yeah,
he's a solid dude. He's a gvir, I would say. And so I say, I'm like, oh, like there's a part of me that says there's some kind of a Jewish gene in me that says, oh, good that there's like a dude that's like not going to conform so easily.
I'm with you, and I support it. My point is it's just simpler, and this is, I think, the point Lou is making. Okay, but that does not give you the right to violate the basics of the social contract.
Right.
So stand outside the shul with a sign, or talk to your friends, make up. But it is not okay.
Right. You're
to
forcing
undermine the basic element of the social fabric, which is there's a social contract with every association freely formed. There's your freedom, freely formed. You are free to leave. Thank you very much.
By the way, I hate to bring the. I really did not want to talk about this stuff today, but
I know we're going to do it.
I know, but it's such a big thing around. It's all around us. There's one more thing I have to say that my mother said. This is a medical thing. My mom told me that my mom's a scientist and a serious person. She told me that she's read reports that basically explain that where do the new strains, mutations come from? It's not from people who've been vaccinated, when the virus strikes, usually dies pretty quickly because the system is ready for it. And it's not in old people who either get very sick or actually succumb to it, God forbid, and die. She says it's actually in healthy people. Healthy people's whose system fights it. That's when the virus
is adapting, and the minor strain is able to survive a little bit more and increase. Yeah, you're a human petri dish. That is exactly what happens.
Okay, we have just another 5 minutes, I think, so I want to use them properly for a little bit more Torah. We have a Torah portion of Tetzaveh, which is the only Torah portion in the whole Torah that after
book of Moses,
the whole books of Moses. Good. After the Torah portion of Exodus, Shmot, there's not one Torah portion except for this one that does not mention Moses' name. This is the one that does not mention Moses' name. The beauty, obviously, is that it's at the same time as comes almost every year at the same time as Purim, where you don't have the name of God mentioned in the Megillah. The explanations that the sages give is that one time when Moses and God are arguing about the fate of the Jewish people, he says, "Erase me from the book which you have written." And so even that phrasing one time, even though it was not fulfilled, Moses is certainly not erased from the book of Moses. God pulled out the eraser,
was like, I'll just get out of Tetzaveh.
Right, I'll get you out on Tetzaveh. And Tetzaveh is really about, I'm saying this in quote marks, the competition to Moses, which is his brother Aaron. And I say this in quote marks because it indeed was never a competition, and that's one of the beauties of Aaron, is that he is indeed, his priesthood and his priestliness is not in competition with Moses. But this is about how the priest is going to be dressed, the vestments of the priest, of the high priest, which is Aaron at the time anyway. That's the original high priest. And this is the non-Moses Torah portion, ostensibly. Yeah. This is, and we have here also bookends of very spiritual vessels, and that is the oil that's gathered for the lighting of the menorah, and at the very end, the altar of the spices, the
incense,
Mizbech Ketoret, right? The incense, the Mizbech Ketoret or Mizbech Zahav, which is in the kind of inner courtyard of the Kodesh, and which is lit twice a day. And kind of a puff of sweet-smelling smoke and incense burning happens at the tabernacle and later the temple, and we've done this in previous years in our show, a big discussion about the various vestments, right, of the Kohen Gadol, including the names of all the tribes of Israel. There's not a little bit of writing he's kind of a walking billboard. He's got the 12 tribes. Behind the 12 tribes, there is also the ineffable name of God written. He's got the 12 tribes on the shoulders, and he's got
Kodesh Lashem.
Kodesh Lashem on it's written on his forehead.
Right there on his forehead.
What's it called? Diadem or something?
A diadem.
Diadem, right, diadem. So he's got
I have one if you want to borrow it.
Do you really? I'd like to see that. You probably use it for a laser thing when there's heretics flying out there.
No, it says, "What are you looking at?"
And of course, we know that Prohibition Pickle has the Kohen Gadol, but on the forehead it says Gewalt. Gewalt. That's what it says.
And the Ketoret herring is actually really, really good.
That's right. And that's
I'm telling you now because we don't live in the same city, but I'm giving out a mini Kiddush box for my Mishloach
Mana. Wow. What does it have in it?
Herring pickle crackers. Listen, I'm not the wealthiest man you've ever known, but I think it'll go well. So I want to give you a thought on Moshe. I want to think of a thought on Moshe and why he's not there. You ready? Because I got to get out of here. So
yeah, sure. I go for it.
The work is long. The time is short. The master is
pressing. You bet.
I think the reason that Moshe is absent here, at least in the experience sense, because of course is ultimately present because he's still giving us this Torah, is Moshe is about content. And this is a parsha about context. Now, you could say the same thing about Truma, and we'd have to figure out what's the difference there. And I don't mean context as sort of belittling that. I mean that Aaron's role as Kohen Gadol, and really the whole Mishkan, is to understand the power of the aesthetics of to really have a spiritual impact. Moshe, we know, was never the person of aesthetics, right? He's kaved lashon, like we've spoken about, as you so nicely said. He just says it like it is. He's all about the actual reality and not how it needs to be heard by you in order that you could understand it, except that's Aaron. Right? So on one hand, you can't separate the two. There's no content without context, no context of any meaning without content. But here it's to elevate, I think, the context element, to understand that these aren't just pretty clothes. Nor, by the way, should we reduce them to symbolic representations of content, which we can also learn a lot from each of them. Right? They teach it, but no, they need to be visualized and embraced as an independent aesthetic and therefore moral experience. Right? This is why, as we've spoken about in previous years, the detail here is like, well, why do I care? Why is this? I mean, it's 4 parsha between Shuma Tetzava and then Vayakov Pekudei, right? Why? The answer is because you need to brand this into your mind to be able to picture the Kohen Gadol in these 8 vestments, walking into the Kodesh with the shulchan on his right and the menorah on his left, and the golden altar before him, and see the parochet separating the Kodesh Kodashim, and imagine what's beyond it. If you can picture that in your mind, that is a gateway to a different type of spiritual practice. And that's, I think, and it's important to remove the content from it for a little while to understand that is a legitimate part of our avoda.
I think that really speaks of the stuff that you said before, which is wonder, want to wander. And it is a wonder, and it is a wonder to be able to see these things with your own eyes. And B'ezrat Hashem, we really look forward to the day where we will see again the Aron HaKodesh, that menorah, that smell of the Ketoret. And it is a wonder. It's also a wonder where these things are. There's a wonder of what they look like. It's a wonder to meet the man, and it's certainly a wonder to really get close to God. Ayin ba'ayin, El Elokim b'Tzion. We will see Hashem eye to eye here in Zion. B'ezrat Hashem. I want to wish you a great and happy Purim. If I don't see you, then I'm going to try to call you at least and have l'chaim with you if possible. Or Zoom l'chaims, I think, are also the call of the day. So Zoom your friends and have your glasses raised high and ready.
A little grill for Shabbos, just so you know, for a couple hours before Shabbat. So it's a good time.
Good, gotcha.
I will be receiving on my porch and in my ears.
Very good.
Whether it'll be coherent or not, who knows?
That's right. And we're going to have a l'chaim. Rav Mike and myself are going to have a l'chaim for you out there, wherever you are, around the world, in the land of Israel, outside of the land of Israel, Jew and Gentile, friend of the God of Israel. We will have a l'chaim for you. We're having a l'chaim for you right now, spiritually speaking, and God bless you wherever you are, folks. Thank you so much for being with me. There's more great stuff on the way. If you're listening on podcast, a lot more. So stay tuned for that, and lots of love and lots of blessings from the land of blessings. Rav Mike Feuer, happy Purim, Shabbat Shalom, and thanks again.
Good Purim, good Shabbos.
And if people want more of Rav Mike Feuer, please check out ravmike.com or jewishstory.co for Jewish History podcasts, and of course, spiritual counseling as well. Rav Mike, thanks again.
Good Purim.
Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.